From the outside, Daniel Reeves had it all. The sprawling penthouse overlooking Manhattan, the million-dollar smile that graced every business magazine, and the flawless family that completed his image. To the board, he was a visionary. To the world, a symbol of success. To his wife, Clara, he was distant but dependable. The morning sunlight hit his polished desk as he signed another deal worth millions. The phone buzzed. "Sir, the new nanny just arrived," his assistant said. Daniel barely looked up. "Handle it," he replied, his tone clipped. Downstairs, Mara, a soft-spoken woman in her late 20s, stepped into the Reeves residence. Her calm eyes took in the grand home, the silence, the tension, the loneliness hiding behind all the luxury. When she met Clara, she smiled politely. "I'm here to help with your son, ma'am." But as their eyes met, Clara sensed something unsettlingly familiar. Mara knew things she shouldn't. And before the week was over, she'd uncover a secret that would shatter the life Daniel had built. The Reeves mansion ran like a machine, quiet, efficient, and detached. Every sound felt calculated, every word rehearsed. But Mara noticed the cracks. On her second day, while helping little Ethan with breakfast, she heard laughter echo from Daniel's office. It wasn't Clara's voice. It was soft, youthful, familiar. Curiosity tugged at her, but she stayed composed. "Finish your cereal, sweetheart," she said gently, ruffling Ethan's hair. Then she walked past the glass corridor, pretending to tidy up. Through the half-open door, Daniel sat close beside a young woman, his marketing executive, Sophie. The tone was personal, too warm for business. A hand brushed his shoulder. Mara froze. Not from shock, but from recognition. She knew Sophie. They weren't strangers. In fact, Sophie had been her college roommate, the one who once cried about being someone's secret. Mara stepped back silently, heart pounding. She hadn't come here by accident. That evening, Clara handed her a cup of tea and smiled. "You're doing a wonderful job already. I haven't seen Ethan this happy in months." Mara smiled faintly, her voice steady. "Thank you, ma'am. I'm just here to help." But deep inside she knew she was here to reveal. The next morning, the city skyline glimmered behind tinted glass windows as Daniel prepared for another business trip. Clara, radiant in her silk robe, kissed him goodbye, unaware that his briefcase carried more lies than files. Mara stood silently by the staircase, Ethan's backpack in hand. "Sir, the car is ready," she said softly. Daniel nodded, barely meeting her eyes. But the moment he stepped outside, she noticed it. A faint perfume that didn't belong to Clara clung to his jacket. Vanilla and jasmine, Sophie's signature scent. That night, Clara hosted a charity dinner in the penthouse suite. The room sparkled with diamonds, laughter, and the sound of glasses clinking. But beneath the laughter, Mara overheard whispers, guests gossiping about Daniel's mysterious trips to Chicago and the woman seen with him at the Palmer Hotel. When Clara walked by, smiling and clueless, Mara's heart ached. She admired her, the kindness, the grace. She didn't deserve this. After the guests left, Clara sighed. "Sometimes I feel like I'm the last to know my own husband." Mara looked at her, torn between loyalty and truth. "Maybe," she said carefully, "it's time someone told you what's really happening." Mara couldn't sleep that night. The city outside whispered secrets through the rain, but none were louder than the ones in her mind. When Daniel's office light flickered off, she quietly stepped into the study. The air smelled faintly of cologne and deception. On his desk sat a silver laptop, open, glowing. She hesitated, but then her fingers moved. Emails. Dozens of them. Sophie. Heart. Miss you already. Next weekend. Same place? Her stomach twisted. But the real shock came when she saw photos. Daniel, not in boardrooms, but in parks, holding hands with Sophie, smiling in a way he never did with Clara. And in one picture, a small girl, about Ethan's age, with his eyes. Mara's breath caught. A second child. She backed away from the desk, shaking. The truth she thought she wanted now felt like a curse. Just then, the office door creaked. Clara stood there in her nightgown, eyes half asleep. "Mara, what are you doing?" Mara forced a smile. "I was just checking if everything was locked." Clara nodded slowly. "You're always so thoughtful." When Clara turned away, Mara closed the laptop, but she couldn't close what she'd seen. The next morning, sunlight filled the Reeves kitchen, but to Mara it felt cold, like the truth had drained the warmth from the walls. Clara sat at the counter, scrolling through messages on her phone, unaware that her world was already cracking. "Mara, Daniel's flight got delayed again. Can you make Ethan's lunch? He only eats if you prepare it." Mara smiled faintly. "Of course, ma'am." As she sliced apples, Clara sighed. "Sometimes I wonder if business trips are just excuses. You know what I mean?" Mara froze for a moment. The weight of last night's discovery pressed against her chest. "Maybe he's just overwhelmed," she replied softly. But Clara's voice trembled. "A wife knows when something's wrong." Their eyes met, one searching, the other hiding. Later, when Ethan napped, Clara joined Mara in the garden. "You're different from the others," she said gently. "You actually care." Mara's throat tightened. "I do, ma'am, more than you think." Clara smiled sadly. "You remind me of myself before I learned that love and truth don't always live in the same house." Mara looked away, tears welling. She had come to protect this family, but soon she'd be the one to break it. The tension in the Reeves mansion began to hum like static in the air. Daniel had returned early from his trip, a move that surprised everyone, especially Clara. "Flight got canceled," he explained, loosening his tie. "Figured I'd work from home." But Mara knew better. His eyes darted towards her, a flash of recognition, maybe suspicion. He must have noticed his office had been disturbed. As the day went on, Daniel's temper flared over little things. The coffee wasn't hot enough. The papers were missing. Ethan's laughter was too loud. Clara tried to stay calm, but Mara could feel her patience thinning. Later that afternoon, as Daniel took a call in the study, Mara passed by and heard his voice, low and urgent. "Listen, Sophie, I told you not to message me here. She's getting suspicious. We need to lay down for a while." Mara's pulse quickened. The truth was eating through his lies like fire through paper. Then Clara walked in. "Who was that?" she asked, voice steady but sharp. Daniel froze. But Mara stepped forward, holding Ethan's toy. "Sorry, ma'am. That was me on the phone. I was confirming Ethan's doctor's appointment." Clara nodded, confused but trusting. Daniel's jaw tightened. Now both of them knew the other was hiding something.
That Friday evening, Clara decided to host a quiet family dinner. Just her, Daniel, Ethan, and Mara. She said it was to reconnect, but beneath her calm tone was something sharper, almost like intuition. The dining room gleamed under golden lights. Crystal glasses, fresh tulips, and the smell of roasted salmon filled the air. Daniel smiled through it all, a man pretending his world wasn't about to cave in. Mara served the dishes carefully, trying to hide her trembling hands. Every time Daniel's gaze met hers, unspoken words hung between them. She knew too much, and he knew she did. Clara, sipping her wine, finally broke the silence. "Daniel," she said sweetly, "Ethan's teacher told me you missed the father's event again. You said you were in Chicago, but there's no record of your flight." Daniel froze, fork halfway to his mouth. "Clara, I told you it was a private meeting." Mara glanced at him, just for a moment. That single look was enough. Clara noticed. Her voice dropped. "You're lying, aren't you?" The air turned heavy. Ethan's laughter from the next room only deepened the ache. Daniel slammed his napkin down. "This dinner's over." He stormed off. Clara sat still, staring at the empty chair. Mara whispered, "Ma'am, maybe it's time you know everything." The next morning, the mansion was quiet, too quiet. Daniel had left before dawn, claiming a sudden business emergency, but Mara knew exactly where he'd gone. Clara sat in the living room, her coffee untouched, staring out at the city skyline. Her eyes looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of not knowing. Mara entered, holding a small manila envelope. Her hands shook slightly. She had printed the photos, the messages, the flight receipts, everything. "Ma'am," Mara began softly, "there's something I need to give you." Clara turned, confused. "What's this?" "Proof," Mara said, voice barely above a whisper, "of what your husband's been doing." Clara's trembling fingers opened the envelope. As she looked through the papers, her lips parted, then quivered. The photo of Daniel with Sophie and the little girl fell to the floor. Her voice cracked. "He has another family?" Mara's heart broke watching her. "I'm so sorry. I thought you deserved the truth." Clara pressed her hand to her chest, tears falling silently. "All these years, I defended him. I believed every word." Then she looked up, eyes fierce now. "Where did you get this, Mara?" The question hung in the air like thunder. That evening, rain pounded against the mansion windows like a drumbeat. Clara sat by the fireplace, the envelope on the table beside her, waiting. Her face was calm, too calm. When Daniel walked in, shaking off his umbrella, he froze at the sight of her. "You're still up?" Clara didn't answer. She simply slid the envelope across the table. "You might want to explain this." Daniel's color drained as he flipped through the photos. His voice cracked. "Where did you—" Don't you dare lie again." For a long moment, all that filled the room was the sound of the fire. Then Clara whispered, "Daniel, how long have you been living this double life?" Daniel sank into the chair opposite her. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," he murmured. "Just an affair or a second family?" Clara snapped. Mara stood quietly by the hallway, watching from the shadows. This wasn't how she had wanted the truth to come out, but it was the only way. Finally, Daniel looked up, defeated. "I never meant to hurt you." Clara's eyes glistened. "You didn't just hurt me, Daniel. You broke the home you swore to protect." The night's confrontation left the mansion echoing with silence. Daniel locked himself in his study. Clara sat in her bedroom, clutching Ethan's photo like a shield. Mara lingered near the kitchen, guilt pressing heavy on her chest. She had done what she believed was right, but the truth had a cost. Then came Clara's voice from the hallway. "Mara, please come in." Mara entered slowly. Her eyes were swollen, but steady. "You knew, didn't you? Long before you showed me that envelope." Mara hesitated. "Yes, ma'am. I didn't come here by chance." Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" Mara took a breath. "Sophie, the woman in those pictures, was my friend in college. Years ago, she told me about a man who promised to leave his wife. That man was Daniel Reeves." Clara's lips parted.
trembling. "I came here not to destroy you, but to protect you. Sophie died last year, in an accident. I found out afterwards that the child, his second daughter, was left behind." Clara's breath caught. "You mean Daniel has another daughter still alive?" Mara nodded, tears brimming. "Yes, ma'am. And she doesn't even know who her father is." The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through gray clouds. The house felt smaller, quieter, as though everyone inside was holding their breath. Clara sat at the kitchen table, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Across from her, Mara placed a worn photograph on the table. A little girl with curly hair and Daniel's unmistakable blue eyes. "She's 6, Mara said softly. "Her name is Emily. Sophie's parents are elderly. They've been struggling to care for her." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "She looks so much like Ethan." "She does," Mara whispered. "And she keeps asking about her father." From the doorway, Daniel's voice broke the silence. "You had no right to bring this here." Clara turned sharply. "No right? You hit a child, Daniel." Daniel's shoulders slumped. "I was trying to protect our family." Clara rose to her feet. "Protect us? You built a second life, a secret life, while pretending this home was enough." Mara's voice trembled. "Sir, she deserves to know you. She's your daughter." Daniel looked at the photo again, and for the first time his pride cracked. "What do you expect me to do?" Clara's voice steadied. "Be a father to both your children, or lose everything." A week later, Daniel Reeves stood outside a modest suburban house, a world away from the glass and marble of his corporate empire. The wind carried the faint sound of laughter, a child's laughter. Clara sat in the car, watching as Daniel took slow, unsteady steps toward the porch. Mara stood beside him, holding an umbrella. "She's inside," she said quietly. When the door opened, Emily peeked out. Her hair framed her face in soft curls. She looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Are you my daddy?" Daniel's throat tightened. For a moment, all the walls he'd built, the lies, the pride, the greed, came crashing down. He knelt, voice breaking. "Yes, sweetheart, I am." Behind them, Clara wiped away tears. Mara placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing," Clara whispered. "No," Mara said softly. "You did, by forgiving him." Weeks later, the Reeves mansion felt different. No longer a palace of secrets, but a home of healing. Emily and Ethan played together in the garden. Daniel worked less, laughed more. As Clara watched them, she turned to Mara. "You didn't just save this family, Mara. You gave it back its heart." Mara smiled gently. "Sometimes the truth breaks before it heals." And as the sun set behind the skyline, it felt like for the first time, everyone was finally free.